This is the original Firefighter podcast, where we talk about anything you would talk about at the firehouse kitchen table. And sometimes we even talk about fighting fires. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell. Let's get into the show. This is the original Firefighter podcast, and we are back in 2026. We hope that you've had a great Christmas and a happy new year. And now the 2026 year is upon us. It kicked off in tremendous fashion with really nothing much going on in the world today. That's just a joke. There's lots going on, of course, but we're going to take some time tonight and circle back around to some things that were important to us in 2025. And one of the things that we discussed a lot in 2025 was the fire service, the merit within the fire service, the message that the fire service holds on to today, and when that merit and message becomes hijacked by political figures who want to capitalize on something being different, the new thing, the shiny thing, so that we look at that and we take our eyes off the fact that at the end of the day, the fire service has always been and will always be people driven to do the best that they can to help other people. So what continued to gnaw at me over the holiday season was knowing the fact that the largest city in the United States, the largest fire department in the United States, with the new mayor, Zoran Mamdani, has appointed a new fire commissioner, a woman with no firefighting experience. That's the headline. And before anybody jumps into conclusions, let's be clear. The only thing that's ever mattered is whether you can do the job. Now, trust me, I know there's lots of facets to the fire service. There's lots of things that people have to be able to do, the leadership skills that have to start from the top, filtrate down to the bottom, and also the fact that we need to have everyone buying into the message and the culture of our fire departments across the country. And no one's better at that than FDNY. No one is more dialed in on that than the FDNY. We can look at it from all different types of angles, but I think the FDNY is special because it is the largest department in the United States. And quite frankly, that kind of creates a beacon, if you will. You know, it's like a light on the top of a hill, and you can kind of see it no matter where you're standing because it's so big, right? And at the end of the day, they're constantly being attacked to some degree, shape or form. There's always somebody or something or some entity out there that wants to come at New York City in some way, and they just take it. They just take it because the best of them is always on the front line. And the last I looked, and the last time I was checking in on what was going on in the fire service across the country and in the great city, in the great state of New York, is that nobody cares about what someone's gender is anymore. No one cares about what your sexual preference is anymore. And that's the way that it should be. So that's what I'm saying here, is that before anyone jumps to conclusions, we're not here to have a conversation about what this individual's identity is. The fire doesn't care about your race, your gender, your religion. It doesn't care who you love. Fire is the ultimate equalizer. It demands competence, courage, and commitment regardless of the identity. But what has a lot of veterans like me, 35 years in the fire service, concerned, it isn't the orientation of a person. It's the word experience, or really the lack of it. So the thing I want to dive into is, what is the message and the morale? Fire departments are built on a chain of command, leadership that earns its authority through trials, sweat, and time on the line. When someone with no operational experience is placed at the helm of an organization like the FDNY, it sends a message, intentionally or not. Expertise and field-earned leadership, they aren't necessary until it is. That message hits hard for the thousands of firefighters who've risked their lives, climbed the ranks, and earned every patch on their sleeves or insignia on their collars. So when someone like Zoran Mamdani comes out, a J.B. Pritzker comes out, a Gavin Newsom comes out, basically when a mayor comes out, when a governor comes out, and for that matter, when the President of the United States comes out and begins to make appointments, there's a lot of things that start to come into question when a headline will say, for example, from the Daily Wire runs a headline saying, "A gay woman now leads America's largest fire department with no firefighting experience." It's not the first adjective that stings, it's the last few words of that statement. Why in 2026 are we still framing leadership in terms of identity first? Aren't we past that? If we're not past it, when will we be? Should we get past it? That's a question to the audience. Should we get past it? Shouldn't the headline read, FDNY appoints proven leader ready to serve New York? Shouldn't that be the storyline headline? Shouldn't that be the case in all walks of the fire service? Shouldn't that be on the front page headline news? FDNY appoints proven leader ready to serve New York. Isn't that the story that we should all want? What matters in this profession isn't what label you carry, it's what you carry into the fire. When the alarm goes off and you've got only minutes to act, nobody's asking who you voted for or what you identify as. The only question is, can you perform? So as we take a look at this, I wanted to dive into who this new fire commissioner is. Lillian Bonsignor spent about 3 decades in FDNY EMS, eventually becoming chief of EMS operations. Hats off. Great job. The highest rank ever held by a uniformed woman in the department at the time. Again, awesome. That is so great. Good job. She led EMS through the COVID-19 surge in New York City, and the incoming mayor, now Mayor Zoran Mamdani, publicly highlighted her calm, decisive leadership in crisis and her familiarity with large-scale emergencies, logistics as key reasons for her selection. Absolutely. I totally understand all that. I get it that fire and EMS, EMS and fire at this point in time, it should be a handshake. And I'm here for it. I'm here for firefighting and EMS to have equal seats at the table. I know which one that I'd rather be doing. You know, I want to ride the box, said no firefighter ever. I'm sorry, but that's just true, right? Because it's a browbeating when you get on that, what they call the meat wagon. You're getting your butt kicked, and everybody knows it. And everyone knows that there's not enough medics across the country. There's not enough ambulances across the country. Hell, there's not enough firefighters and fire trucks at this point because, quite frankly, the entirety of our society has become overly dependent on first responders to fix a vast majority of problems that, quite frankly, they don't need to be addressed by first responders because we are not taking personal self-accountability and reaction responsibility for ourselves. We rely on other people to fix our problems. So here we are, but being clear that, I do believe, Original Firefighter believes that fire and EMS are both vitally important. And so I don't look at this individual, Bonsignor, I don't look at her as being anything less because she came from the EMS side of fire service. That's got nothing to do with it. Supporters within EMS unions have framed her appointment as a signal that EMS will finally be treated as integral to the FDNY's mission with a focus on response times, hospital condition, and pay parity for EMTs. Again, those are all great things. It's awesome that that's something that her supporters are saying that she's going to be able to bring to the table. Awesome. But if it's true that EMS is now going to have a fair share or a seat at the table as much as the FDNY's mission towards fighting fires are, shouldn't that person be equally versed in both sides of the table? I mean, if that person now represents all facets of FDNY, shouldn't that person have touched all those facets and not just touch them, but actually be submersed in them for quite some time, earning stripes on both sides of the table? I know that that's what I would want. I think that most people would want that for their resume, is to say that I've walked both major lanes in the fire service, because again, at the end of the day, this is still the majority of resides in the fire service. And it does for a reason. There's a long, steep history on where EMS came from. It came and born out of the fire service. And it was a great part of it was because the firefighters were already there. They were already in the fire stations. So it was an untapped resource that communities as a whole said, well, how about if the firefighters do it? And we said, yes, okay, we'll do that. And that's what firefighters do. That's literally what they do constantly. They go, yeah, okay, well, we'll do that too. So now we're fighting the fires, and then we're running the med calls, and then we're doing the tech rescue, and then we're getting in the lakes and the rivers, and then we're smoke jumping and fighting wildland fires, and then we're a part of domestic and international terrorism response, and then we're a part of mass shooting response. I mean, it just doesn't ever end. So here again, shouldn't the individual of all types of the next fire chiefs, the next fire commissioner, shouldn't they all be a person, regardless of the gender, regardless of their faith, all the things we keep saying, regardless of any of that stuff, doesn't it matter that they've walked all the lanes so that they can then rise to sit at that top seat and say, I understand what is going on throughout this entire department, regardless of the division that this person came from. This happens to be that this person came from EMS, and that's okay. Sounds like she's got a steep career in the EMS side. But here's the thing that really starts to get under the skin of so many of us in the fire service. Using Mamdani as the example of the pinnacle elected official, largest city in the United States, he steps out and he, first order of business is to say that he's going to appoint the second woman to lead FDNY, the first openly gay person. And what is all this? What does it matter? What does this matter? It wasn't surprising that Elon Musk, he weighed in pretty quick, warned the public that people will die. Pretty strong statement, right? I mean, that'll get anybody's attention. If Elon Musk is saying that people will die, everybody's going to write about it. Everybody's going to say something about it. Everybody's going to get on the Twitter and the X and the Truth Social and anything that's out there that can get other people reacting and being upset. When at the end of the day, what's being hijacked is a person's identity for the glory of an individual, a politician, to be able to say, see, look what I did. I took this person and I took their non-needed identity for the job that's at hand and said, this person is going to lead the FDN, which then leaves so many other people on the other side going, why? Why this person? Because all the other stuff doesn't matter. It's just basically, well, what are the credentials? And if it's 3 decades of EMS, okay, that's great. Good. Sounds like you got that covered. But what about the other side of it? And that plays out all day, all night in all the 5 boroughs. I'm on all the socials too. I see all the fires, all the calls. I have, friends that were with the FDNY, are on FDNY. I have friends that have major roles in major cities and major departments across the country. And I'm constantly getting to see the different calls and the things that they're dealing with. And in every single call and every single incident, trust me, I understand that they're dealing with people. And they're dealing with people who are not like them. They are different. All of us are different to some degree, right? I think that's the point. We're supposed to be different, but, inclusive and equal and fair to one another and have some humanity towards each other and go help a person that needs some additional help in whatever way, shape, or form that you can help them. Okay, great. And then firefighters just do that to another degree. And it just happens to be that most of them make a career of it. And that's a great thing. That's a great thing that they do that they choose that profession. But I guarantee that they're not choosing the profession so that somebody can walk them out onto a stage and parade them around as if, see, look at the things that this person represents that, again, have nothing to do with fighting fires or leading EMS divisions and all the other things that we've just gone over. Nobody cares about what that person uniquely, individually identifies themselves as. When you put the uniform on, you're not identifying yourself as anything other than the firefighter or the paramedic or the EMT of the community that you serve based on the patch that is on your sleeve. That's it. And if you're one of those individuals that, decides that you're going to just be a little bit more funky in your uniform, again, got to tell you, nobody cares. Nobody cares what your hair color is. Nobody cares how many tattoos you have or how many piercings. I mean, there should be standards. I mean, that's an opinion, but if there are departments out there that have loosened those type of standards, which I know they have, fine, they have. That's a choice that they make. But at the end of the day, you're not doing anything uniquely special. If you're treating everyone equally, no matter what their background is, then I think you're doing a great job, because there's a lot of that not going around right now. I mean, we know that there are groups of people that are motivated, whether they're professionally organized and professionally funded, or they're just plain ignorant and just have, idiocy towards other humans, and they just choose to not like people for the way they look or where they come from or who they love. But the fire service, I guarantee you, doesn't care. What we care about is, can we collectively answer the next call? That's how people don't die. I think that Elon Musk might have been a little bit too quick and a little, bombastic there to say what he said. People will die. People will die. Okay, fine. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe nothing will happen. Maybe this individual, this new fire commissioner, will do perfectly fine. That'd be wonderful. But I guarantee you that it has got nothing to do with her gender specifics, background, upbringing, where she came from, who she loves, who she identifies with. It doesn't matter. I guarantee you what matters is the collective resume of the decades that she's been in the EMS world. And if she didn't touch any time in the fire service, then it is rightfully so that so many on the other side say, why? How does that make sense? This kind of likens back to last year with a repeated headline coming out of LA. And we talked a lot about this in Original Firefighter last year in 2025. it was hard to look away from it because 2025, as we all know, started out with devastating wildland fires that turned into urban, that turned into just basically devastating so much of LA and the Palisades and all the communities that we've already touched on. But the one person that was brought out in broad daylight, basically to crucify her, was Kristen Crowley. And guess what? Kristen Crowley became Los Angeles' first female and first openly gay fire chief in 2022, after a long operational career that included serving as a firefighter, paramedic, and fire marshal. Now, when I look into that, see, now I'm kind of thinking, well, I think we're getting somewhere, because this sounds to me like an individual that has a lot of the same firsts that everyone seems to want to write about. But at the end of the day, what does it matter? Shouldn't it just be we have a proven leader that is about to take over the reins of a ginormous organization that has so many moving parts that you kind of have to give that person an award just for being able to manage all of that, just on management alone. And I know great people in the fire service who are awesome organizers. They are amazing program managers. They are leaders in the fields that they walk in. But if you don't take the time to diversify yourself into all the facets of the fire service, how can you claim to be that person that should lead all of those things, all those divisions, all those people working within the divisions? And again, this person, Kristen Crowley, from the resume I can find, is that she looks like she does represent all of that. Now, after the devastating LA wildfires, the political turmoil in the early 25, it pushed her out, and the criticism developed. And the development was based on decisions that were made at the time, resource allocation, some union friction. Yet the public discussion often dragged her sexual identity and first lesbian chief status back into the spotlight while people were literally losing their homes. Kristen Crowley didn't do that. Nobody else did that. You know who did that? The media did that for sure. And when it was basically decided that there was no way to really pin the devastation and the bad decisions and the gross incompetence onto the actual individuals that should have been held responsible, and we know who that is, the governor of California, the mayor of LA. No, what they did is they decided that at this point in time that Chief Crowley and the things that identified her were no longer important, and that it was now time to pin all the blame on that individual. The pattern is, what can you highlight at the time when it helps you politically? Because you can appoint people and parade them out for the first time that you're introducing and making the big announcement and go down this long list of the firsts and the things that this person identifies as. But the second that something goes the other way and it looks like you're going to be held responsible, or that you're going to be holding, the hot potato, you just throw the hot potato at the person that you just paraded out there and say, oh no, sorry, it was actually that person's problem. That they were the problem. So be careful with the way that you identify. What I would like to do is think that people would identify with that fact that they're a strong, proven leader and they have a great track record, and that track record is proven. That way, when something doesn't quite go your way or doesn't go the way that you were expecting it to go, that way when the shit's hitting the fan, it'd be hard to look the other way and go, well, wait a minute here. You had one of the strongest leader in the position helping to solve the problem, helping to solve the wildland urban interface fire that's eating up the West Coast, or the next planes that fly into buildings on the East Coast. I mean, at that point in time, isn't that when you want the individuals with the strongest resumes leading the charge in those situations, and doing it in a way where that leadership and expertise can't crack open so that we start to splinter and say, well, now this individual really wasn't prepared, when in fact that they really were all along. When a leader from a minority group is hired, their identity is marketed. That's the point of what this conversation, this episode is about. The identity is marketed. When they're criticized or removed, that same identity is used as a shorthand in the story. That's unfair both to them as professionals and to the profession. So how can this erode fire service culture? Undermining the authority. When the top job appears to be awarded for symbolic reasons, it can feel like a dismissal of the decades of calls and drills, close calls, line of duty deaths that built any department's traditions and standards. That perception, fair or not, it chips away at buy-in from the line. If members come to believe that the fastest way to advance is to fit a narrative especially a political figure's narrative or a political movement's narrative. Instead of mastering the craft, you risk weakening the culture of merit, mentorship, and relentless improvement that keeps people alive. When identity is constantly foregrounded, it can be either a shield against criticism, as in, quote, you're only complaining because, fill in the blank there, or a weapon against the individual, quote, see, DEI hires don't work. Both outcomes poison honest conversation about performance and standards. It creates an us versus them inside the house. Perceived politically driven appointments can harden divisions between ranks, between unions and administration, and between companies. People start sorting leaders into, quote unquote, real fire people versus, quote, political showpieces, which is dangerous when trust is the currency on the fireground. So this does circle back in a large way that, once again, the policies of DEI, the messaging of DEI becomes flashpoints in the fire service, rightly or wrongly. It's right there in front of us, and it's on the major stage, right? It's the highest appointment, it's the largest department in the largest city of the country. So there again, kind of like that fire on top of a hill that you can't help but see. It's there, and we can actually just choose to look away from that and just go, well, you know what? It really doesn't affect me. Why should it matter? Well, that's an individual choice, and that's also individually thinking. But there's nothing about the fire service that is an individual. It doesn't matter if you're a probationary firefighter, a driver engineer, a firefighter paramedic. It doesn't matter if you're a lieutenant, captain, battalion chief, division. It doesn't matter what position you're holding, fire inspector, fire marshal, arson investigator. It doesn't matter. You are not working as an individual ever. You're always a part of a group, the group. How you do it will affect certain outcomes, how well you perform. And we should be expecting that everyone should be performing at top-notch levels. That should be the expectation, no matter what. It shouldn't be anything to do with DEI policies and messaging in the fire service. Period. I'll stand on that alone. I got no problem with that. We have seen and heard over time that DEIs, the policies and messaging, they have culturally changed. Physical fitness standards, multiple large departments have gone to court over this. Many line firefighters perceive lowered or adjusted standards as we're watering down the job requirements. And quite frankly, if that's the case, if we are changing the standards to a low degree, then we are watering down the job requirements, because not everyone should be able to do this job. I'm sorry, I know what I cannot do. I can't dribble a basketball to save my life. I'm done. I'm not even going to try. I mean, there's lots of things that I know that I am not built for, not made for. But firefighting and fire service, I'm here for it. And I'm decided that I'm not going to go away. Standards must be job-based, non-negotiable. If DEI efforts are seen as diluting those standards, then resentment and distrust will follow. Guaranteed. Departments like FDNY itself have been under legal pressure for decades to diversify, for sure. There's no doubt. All the departments across the country have been under legal pressure for decades to diversify. We should be diversified. We are a melting pot country. Whether you were born here or you migrated here, you're here because you want to be in the United States of America. You want to love this country. You're here for the right reasons. But for sure, if you're going to step into the fire service, you are not there for your individual identity to be the front line news of the department. You're there to be a part of the company. You're there to be a part of the service being provided at a great level by many on every single call. So let's circle back here and talk again a little bit more about the new fire commissioner, Lillian Bonsignor. She isn't some random political appointee pulled off the street. She has spent over 30 years inside the FDNY. She's been on the EMS side. She's in her mid-50s. She's a career public servant. And yes, she's openly gay. That's part of her story. But it's not the part that I care about. It's not the part that anybody cares about when lives are on the line. My concern, and the concern of lots of firefighters, isn't how she or anyone identifies. It's what she's done on a fireground. It's that gap between medical leadership and fire operations that has the majority of people in the fire service having some conversation about this. Running a massive EMS system is one kind of an experience. I think it's got to be an amazing experience, most likely. Commanding a multi-alarm fire with many maydays going on is another type of experience. And if you're going to say, well, maybe I was there for it, I was on a box or I was running an EMS system that helped to work that problem. It is not the same. It is not. Being in command of hundreds of firefighters and literally, multi companies that stretch out for blocks beyond what we can fathom, because most of us come from departments that are not that large. But when you are in that large of a department and you're nearly singularly the incident commander of those scenes, man, oh man, is the weight heavy on you as an individual for that moment. But you know that in those moments, you are not an individual, that you are seeking and working and orchestrating alongside of other great men and women who are there to do the job and do it to completion. And when the media slaps a tagline on her that says, gay woman with no firefighting experience, they are telling on themselves. They're obsessed with the label and not asking the deeper question. Does this leader have the operational credibility and the team around her to keep her people safe? That's the question. We saw a different version of this in Los Angeles with Chief Kristen Crowley. She did come from the line. She was a firefighter, paramedic, inspector, fire marshal, the whole track. And every time her name hit the national news, it came packaged as LA's first female, first openly gay fire chief. And when the wildfires and politics blew up in 2025 and she was forced out, her non-firefighting identity was dragged into those stories for no good reason, as if that had anything to do with the flame length, the wind conditions, or how many engines the city was willing to staff during that moment, that crisis. That's the trap that we're in. That's the trap. When a leader comes from a minority group, that identity is front page when they're hired, and it stays front page when they are attacked. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to the fire service. The only fair question is, can you do the job, and did the system give you what you needed to succeed? So again, this is where DEI can actually hurt us if we're not honest. If firefighters come to believe that top jobs are handed out for symbolism instead of skill, you're eroding away the culture that has kept this profession alive. It's earned respect, hard standards, and shared sacrifice. If physical tests get changed and nobody clearly explains that they still mirror real tasks, people assume the bar has been lowered. If a lawsuit forces hiring changes and nobody talks about the decades of exclusion that led to it, members just see quote unquote quotas. Diversity should mean we're bringing in people with different strengths who can pass the same job relevant standards. Equity should mean everyone gets the same shot I had. No guarantees, just a fair chance to prove you belong. Inclusion should mean that once you're in, you give yourself to something bigger. The company, the department, the citizens you swore to protect. It should never be about turning someone's identity into a marketing campaign or turning a leadership role into theater. The fire doesn't care about any of that. The emergency doesn't care about any of that. The people who are hurt, trapped, scared, pinned, lost, suffocating, pinned down by smoke, can't find their way out, unconscious and dying, they don't care. They don't care about the boxes that these political figures, leaders, playing political theater, the historic boxes that you're trying to check. It only responds to training, competency, conditioning, split-second decisions made by people who know exactly what they're doing. That's the culture we're risking when we let the story become first this, first that, instead of the only question that matters: can you carry your fair share of the load when everything is on fire, when everything is falling, when the sky is falling? And we've seen that, actually, literally. We've seen that. Where? In New York City. And who was on the front line? The firefighters, the police officers, the EMTs. At the end of the day, identity shouldn't be the story, because when New Yorkers dial 911, they're not calling for symbolism. They're calling for skill. They're calling for the men and women of the fire service, the firefighters who train for the impossible, who hold the line, who live and die by readiness, trust, and experience. So maybe the real question isn't who this new commissioner is, but what message this appointment sends. Does it inspire confidence in the ranks, or does it create confusion? Does it unite the department, or does it divide it? And are we celebrating the right things in leadership? Credentials that look good on paper, or the hard-earned wisdom forged through smoke and fire, EMS, and mass casualties, gunshot wounds and stabbing incidents, hazmats and technical rescues, water and ice rescue, violent acts of domestic and national terrorism, and their interaction with those who do all of this every day regardless of personal identity. That's the fire service of today, folks. That's what matters now more than ever. Because as far as I'm concerned, it should never matter if the crew is all men, all women, or any mix in between. What matters is whether they can get the job done. That's the only bar that counts. That's the fire service I join, and that's the fire service that I stand for today. So with all that said, please leave us your thoughts and opinions, comments. We'd like to hear from you. And as always, in 2026, we want you to have a great start to the year, and we always want you to be safe. This has been the Original Firefighter Podcast. Thanks for watching and listening. Tune in each week on Wednesdays for a new episode. Like and follow us on all social media platforms, and subscribe to our YouTube channel today.